Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Welcome to the Chasing Giants podcast, brought to us by Osseo Gear. Don, it is January 25th, and we're in the middle of 2026 Snowmageddon. You made it home last night in the bad storm, didn't you?
Yeah, we got to apologize for this podcast being released a little bit late, and it's my fault because I was driving home from Kansas yesterday, and what should have been about an 8-hour trip turned into 11 hours. And by the time I got home, it was too late for Terry and I to record. But, man, I had a good time in Kansas. I looked at 7 properties in Kansas last week and met a lot of great people. I don't know if I can't remember if I've got any clients in Kansas that have killed a 200 yet, but it's coming. I set up enough good properties this week that the day's coming when I'm going to have a client with a 200 inch in Kansas.
Well, that's fantastic. We had a crazy busy week last week. We have to apologize. We didn't even get the Chasing Assurance podcast uploaded. I went all the way to South Texas we'll talk about that hunt here in just a little bit, and forgot the power cord to my laptop. So I wasn't even able to record. We had great Wi-Fi in the lodge, but we ended up having to take a week off due to my poor packing skills. And then you were out in Kansas the entire time. We were going to actually record with you from a motel, I believe Friday night, but I had just got done driving back from South Texas, and I was wore out. So we're both to blame a little bit with our crazy schedule, but this'll be posted out midday Sunday, hopefully while everybody's staying in and staying warm. How much snow do you have, Don?
Just guessing probably around 6 inches or so. Supposed to get a little more, but, man, the temperatures this week, actually for the next 10 days, I just looked at the weather forecast before we got on here, and most of the days, the highs are in the teens. There's a couple days where the high's in the low 20s. 3 of the next 4 nights, the low is going to be below zero. So right. We got some cold weather. And you know what that means? It's happening here at the end of January. This is going to cause bucks to start shedding, no doubt about it.
Well, we're going to talk specifically about this weather and habitat decisions when we can make on our farm to help reduce the stress on animals that are out in it. That's what I want to talk about this first segment. Second segment, we got a bunch of events coming up, and we're going to talk about South Texas hunt and a little bit more about Shipshewan and what's going on there. So stay tuned for those along with our listeners submitted questions. But Don, right now, I'm sitting here thinking we're in Kentucky. We don't usually get that much snow. We get more ice than we get snow on the south side of the Ohio River when these fronts come up the river valley. But every once in a while we get snow. I think it's supposed to be snowing hard out there right now, and we got probably 8 inches. There's areas literally 30 minutes north of us that have close to 10 that didn't have the sleet in the middle. But I'm sitting here thinking about what could I have done differently on my farm, not only for the snow, but this howling wind that you just talked about and the brutal temp, and let's just walk through some of the things on your farm specifically that help those deer survive, from thermal cover to open canopy, and then maybe some other things like you saw out in Kansas or when you made a Kentucky run where we have big cedar thickets and stuff like that, let's just milk this for a few minutes. What can we do on our farms to reduce this stress when this brutal cold, maybe even snow comes in to help these animals survive and flourish?
Well, it's 2 things that we focus on as land managers the most anyway, and that's food and cover. On my farm, I got a couple of different pockets of Norway spruce trees that were really planted too close together years ago when I planted them as seedlings. Today, they're 30 or 40 feet tall, and I did go in and thin those years ago, so they're not as thick as they were when I planted them, but you get down under there and, the deer are just totally protected from wind, snow, whatever. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of snow on the ground. Those branches really collect a lot of that. So I've actually got plans this spring for a project that where I'm going to plant some more thermal cover on the farm. Habitat work is never done. I think I'm about done with the property, and then I'll think about what I could do to make it better. And I'm trying to change the travel pattern on this farm just a little bit. And I've got a lot of deer that want to leave my place and go to the east, and I want to change that or try to change that. And I'm going to change it. I've got two ideas. I'm going to try the first one to see if that works. If not, I may be tearing out some of my cover along the east side of the property and turning it into cattle pasture. So those deer, if they want to go east, they're going to have to jump 2 fences with cattle in there to go east. That's a project that's not going to happen in the near future, and I hope it don't happen at all. So what I'm trying to do is I want to pull those deer to the southwest, further down my property, so they don't leave and they stay here where they're protected more. And just to help me, have older age class bucks, so fewer younger bucks get shot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on to my sanctuary to the southwest by planting.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to put some spruce trees, some shingle oaks that hold their leaves, in the winter. I'm going to get some of Kevin Thayer's oaks and mix in there. Those English oaks that he produces that, have an abundant crop of acorns late in November. And I'm just going to extend that thicket by about 7 to 10 acres to the southwest. So, and that's not only to change travel patterns, but it's to give those deer more thermal cover in the winter. Food is huge. So right before this storm, right before I left for Kansas, we had some cold temps, so the ground was kind of froze, but there was no snow on the ground. And that's the conditions when I like to mow my corn.
Yep.
I don't want to mow when it's muddy where you run over those ears and you're pushing them down into the mud. I like to do it when the ground is frozen and you can bust up those stalks and those cobs really easy. But right before this trip, I was going to mow, and I got to looking at the weather forecast. I seen this snow coming, and I thought, I don't want that corn all laying under the snow. I want to keep it, because I don't know how much snow we're going to get. I want to keep some of it up on the stalks. So, I think it's really important whether you're feeding your deer through feeders or food plots like we're restricted to here in Illinois. I think it's important to have food clear through until spring. And there's a lot of deer hunters, I know they're just planting kill plots, if you will. But I think for a serious land manager, if you're going out to your plots in late March and you still don't have food, you need to expand your food plot program, because this is the time of the year right now when they need it the very most.
Yep. Well, and let's think about all the trickle out effects of having food right now for the next maybe 6 to 7 weeks. Number one, we're giving those deer something to eat to reduce stress, stay warm, not get as sick, not get as weak, to give them a better jump start on next year. But we're also, remember, all of those does with fawns right now are walking around taking care of those fawns, even if they disperse. We have talked about this till we're blue in the face. Those are potentially the bucks that make a run back home during those pivotal times of hunting season right now. So, I get it that guys need to save money and watch their budget, and they throw a pile of supplemental feed or corn out during hunting season. But guys, right now, if your state allows it, there's so many trickle out effects that benefit the deer herd and your hunting by feeding those deer and keeping them healthy right now than probably any other time of the year.
And we can even take it another direction, the fetal programming. Dr. Strickland has proven it in the research pen there at Mississippi State that what a doe gets nutrition-wise during her pregnancy is going to set that fawn up for life. So if your does are getting a highly nutritious, nutrient-dense, food throughout the toughest part of the year, her fawns are going to reflect that in their life. And one of the analogies that he used that I share often is that he describes that doe as like having a switchboard inside her, and she's flipping switches to tell that fetus what kind of environment he's going to be born into. And if nutrition is plentiful, she's telling him that he's going to be born in the land of milk and honey, that he can grow the biggest set of antlers that his genetics will allow. However, if she is nutritionally stressed, she's telling her fetus that you're going to be born into some pretty rough times and rough conditions, you're going to need to conserve, and you're going to need to put your nutrition into your body, and you're going to need to hold back on that antler growth because you're just not going to have the nutrition to fully express your genetic potential.
Right.
So, you're really helping yourself when you're supplying that food year round. And especially, this is the most critical time of the year. If I can only feed one time of the year, it would be the late winter months, January, February, March. That's the
Absolutely.
time when they need it the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but we talked about what you've done on your farm, expanding it. I think about areas out in Kansas or maybe here in Kentucky where we have a lot of cedar thickets, a lot of rolling topography. And one of the things that I notice when we do consulting visits or I'm out, on the farm, these pockets of deer will be very similar to cattle. If you go drive past cattle country and you look out and the wind's howling, those cattle are all bunched up just over the crest of a hill. And to me, they're basically getting out of that wind. And one of the projects that I have on my farm, we're going to talk about this in a little bit with Shipshewana with a presentation you and I are doing, is, on these cedar thickets, they're great when the tree is really small and deer can butt up against it. But as that cedar thicket matures, the bottom third of that tree will continue to die off, and you just have the green up higher. And if you bend over or get down on your knees, you can see all the way out across these cedar thickets. And one of the projects that I did, which I'm convinced is one of the reasons that I held so many deer, Jack Houston came and did a thermal survey after season was over, is I went in on these cedar thickets and I would pick a row of trees that maybe were 10 yards long that even maybe had a little bit of an arc, and I cut all of the cedars around it and folded. Cedars are so light, I could just pick them up. We're talking 4-inch diameters, and just piled them up against the standing trees. And basically you're providing all of these windbreaks on both sides of the ridge of the hill. And I know for a fact, based on what we saw from this thermal survey, what we're going to present at Shipshewana, that is creating these pockets of thermal cover for these brutal cold days that these deer can get back up in and snuggle against. So, as you're going around consulting and we're not in areas that have, maybe a candidate for switchgrass, what are some other things that guys can do to use topography or use natural trees, brush, whatever, to improve bedding?
Well, what you talked about with the cattle, Terry, I seen that yesterday on my way home from Kansas. So I was in central Kansas when I started home, and I had to drive 3 hours. First 3 hours of my trip was in Kansas, and I was driving through big cattle country. And the snow had started the evening before, and the wind was howling that morning. When I got up yesterday morning, I looked at 2 properties actually before I hit the road. When I got up, the temperature was 0. Wind chill was 17 below. But when I was driving home, there was these herds of cattle. They were all bunched up tight together. They were down in the low areas where they was out of the wind a little bit. They had snow on their backs. I mean, that's how cold it was. The snow wasn't melting. They were insulated well enough that the snow was on their backs. But they were all in these low depression areas to minimize the wind as much as possible. And deer do the same thing. So if we can combine good thermal cover with those low out of the wind areas, I mean, it's a double positive. We're cutting down on the wind with terrain, but we're also cutting down on the wind with the thermal cover. So cedar, spruce, whatever that are planted in those depressions or whatever, it just makes a great place for the deer to ride out winter storms.
Yeah. So, the guys that say, oh, there's no benefit of this, again, think bigger than just you sitting in a tree stand and looking at a spruce tree back in the woods. Think of it as we're trying to create habitat that's not only going to keep the deer healthy, but attract them in certain times of the year when maybe those bucks come back to this area. So a lot of trickle out benefit from creating good thermal cover and obviously food source. I was so psyched. I ran over to the farm yesterday. We're in Kentucky here, so we're allowed to feed just to make sure that the feeders were good, all that kind of stuff that I was ready to go before the storm, and I got standing soybeans everywhere. Those Gen 2 beans are standing with the pods in it. I planted enough this year between beans, corn, alfalfa, and clover with the orchards that I've never had food this late in the year. So I'm just extremely blessed at what we got snuck in before the drought, that we had crops as good as we did this year. And a lot of that, stems to the programs that we're doing with soil health and what have you. So yeah, this is the first year I'm not going to run out of food, and pretty psyched about it.
And this is also the time of the year when NutriCrave corn gives you the most benefit. Those deer coming out there eating NutriCrave, they're getting more than double the calories as if that was typical ag corn.
Yep.
And this is the time of the year with these conditions, they're burning through those calories to stay warm. And if they're not ingesting as many calories as they're burning, they're losing weight. They're burning fat. Well, having a high fat or high oil corn like NutriCrave that's got 3 times the fat level gives those deer more than double the calories, and it just helps them through these conditions that we're going to have in the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, and all of that product, whether it's the soybeans or the corn, because you haven't mowed it yet, are above that snow level to where they can walk out and not have to dig down. I did have deer digging down in the Deadly Dozen plot last night. I was looking at trail camera, and they were burrowing down for those turnips. So that was kind of fun to get the pictures of. But let's take a quick break, listen to a spot from Osseo. Make sure you check out Mission Whitetail. Before I forget, we had an issue with the call-in service this week. We don't know why. There was about 5 podcasts that just disappeared off the call tree, but worked with the folks at MTech this week. Everything's back to normal. We're under the same extension. So if you missed last week's episode, we apologize about that. But all of it going forward with us, Mission Whitetail, and a couple others, the menus are back up and accurate and live. But make sure you also check out the Mission Whitetail class with Bobby Worthington that Joe Miles and his team produced. I think it's going to be some pretty cool content. We'll be right back, talk about South Texas and some events coming up very soon in your area.
Osseo Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics, give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. Osseo has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit asiogear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
Well, I got to spend quite a bit of time with Joe Miles in South Texas, and we got a lot of cool stuff planned. But before we jump to that, Don, I want you to run through kind of some hit list of 4, events, trade shows that we are going to be at that people need to make themselves aware about.
Yeah, so February 17th coming up, I'm going to be up in Michigan doing a dealer event. There's 2 or 3 dealers, real-world dealers, that have gone together to host this event. It's going to be in Vermontville, Michigan on February 17th that evening. Dinner will start at 5 p.m. and then seminars at 6:30. Mike Mitchell with Mike's Mighty Micros is going to be talking, as well as myself. If you're interested in that event, February 17th, Vermontville, Michigan. That phone number is 517-726-1600. And then just a couple days later, February 19th, 20th, and 21st is the Midwest Sportsman's Classic in Shipshewana, Indiana. Terry and I have talked about that a lot, and we'll both be there all 3 days. Real World Dealers will have a booth. Lester's Feed will have a booth. Chasing Giants will have a booth. I'll have my 4 200-inch deer there at that event. But love to see you there. If you got questions about that event, the number is 574-354-6030. Lots of our sponsors will be there as well. So be a great time. And also, we're going to release the video for the Doubting Thomas buck that I shot last fall. And it'll eventually be on YouTube, but we're not sure when. But the first showing of that will be Friday night, February 20th at the Shipshewana show. Then February 25th and 26th is the Whitetail Management Conference and Real World Dealer event in Arthur, Illinois. If you have any interest in coming, it's for dealers, but dealers are also allowed to bring a guest. So if you're not a dealer, find your local dealer and see if you can come with them as a guest. Consider becoming a dealer, or find a local business and get them to sign up as a dealer. And you have to RSVP, or we want you to RSVP. So please call the office so we can plan for food, or call James Hayden.
You want to show the book for those watching on YouTube? The first draft of this land management book that we've been talking about came in. Looks fantastic.
Yeah, so this is it's almost 100 pages, spiral bound notebook that all our dealers are going to get. It just covers all kinds of land management tips and advice, herbicides, establishing warm season grasses, fruit trees, just on and on down the list. We got a lot of dealers that also install food plots and do habitat projects and such. And we want to make sure that our dealers are successful at their business and help them grow their business, which is the reason for this notebook. So, it's something that you can keep in your truck or wherever, on your desk, and refer back to, and get a lot of questions answered very easily. So those will be handed out free to everyone attending that event. In fact, we're going to go through it. Some of the pages in there, we don't have time to go through all 100 pages, but go through a lot of that information at that event. The last event will be March 19th. I'm speaking at a church in Shelbina, Missouri. This is the home church of Dr. Aaron Gaines, who is one of our nutrition consultants, along with Dr. Shipley. But Aaron is responsible for developing our Expect Healthy Deer technology. Talk to him on a fairly regular basis. Did it a couple times this week, and this is going to be a deer/Jesus event. Aaron asked me to speak at his church, and I'm glad to do it. March 19th. I don't have the phone number or the details yet, but that's far enough out there. Just stick with us, and as that phone number becomes available for more information, we'll share it with you here.
Yeah, Aaron has become one of the most trusted, not only personal, but also business confidants of both you and I. I'm just, I guess we just got to be thankful to God for putting people like Aaron in our lives that not only teach us about different aspects of, these deer, but also kind of stand behind us spiritually and kind of help us. I mean, Aaron's not going to mince words. He'll be the first ones to say, hey, you need to rethink this, or, hey, you're right with this. So, Aaron, thank you for being the guy that you are. He doesn't like it being known, but he was also a very big financial supporter as we were trying to get Chasing Assurance started, and he didn't even want to be recognized, but that's just the type of guy that he is, to not only use his passion of whitetails, because he kills some absolute giants, even battling EHD years, but also a great Christian guy that wants to support the kingdom. So thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron is a great friend and just a super knowledge base. So, a lot of my knowledge comes from people like Aaron, and I only pick a small percentage of his knowledge from him. He's got so much more than what I know, but it's his character that really makes him so valuable to our team. And there's no doubt that whatever Aaron's involved with, he's doing it right. There's no shady business going on, and Christian values. He's always trying to build the kingdom. So we are just absolutely blessed to have him as part of our team.
All right. Well, before we talk about South Texas here for a little bit, I don't want to. There's just so many things about the Midwest Sportsman's Classic that's sponsored by FAE that we just got to make sure that everybody knows. First of all, for people who come to the Friday night main event. So if you remember last year, we did different segments of the Legends Roundtable. We're going to do that again. But on Friday night, the segment, I believe, goes Brent Henderson. Then we have the Doubting Thomas release. And then right after us, to finalize the evening session, is going to be Friday Night Bites with a B, for those who can't understand what I'm saying. Friday Night Bites. And for all of you fishing guys, the Don Higgins and Joe Miles of the fishing industry is going to get up there and talk about elite level fishing, and that's Mark Zona and Kevin Van Dam. So two of the biggest fishing people in the country are going to be there as part of it. So all you guys that love both deer hunting and fishing, fantastic Friday night event. But the whole day, you can either go to the website, or for those folks who don't have access to the internet, go back to that email or that phone number that Don just mentioned. It has a phone tree where you can get the schedule. This is one thing that we haven't talked a lot about, Don. You and I each day will be doing a 1-hour presentation called Managing Higgins Land for Giant Bucks. And this is a habitat case study featuring FAE, who's the title sponsor of the whole show. And folks, this is going to be behind the scenes footage and knowledge of projects that Don and I both did on our farms this summer to improve habitat and huntability. We use this term huntability in our plans a lot of times, where we want to funnel deer within that 20 to 15 yard, and how we used equipment and ideas on our personal farms. This is going to have video, pictures, aerials, and detailed identify a problem, come up with a solution, and then metrics of did it work or not. And we're going to do an hour-long session that FAE's been so gracious to help us with, and I hope that you will check out that on the agenda. But make sure you come see that. We call it Managing Higgins Land because this is the Don Higgins philosophy that he's taught all of us consultants that we put on our own farm. So I'm kind of interested to see how people like this, because it was a cool project for both of us to work on earlier this year.
Yeah, and that FAE mulcher, I guess that's what you call it, shredder, whatever, on the front of my skid loader is a valuable tool. And I actually used it here right before I left for Kansas. I used it on this farm on a little project. The ground was froze, and I like to do a lot of projects when the ground's froze, so I'm not creating a muddy mess. And I got in and did a little bit of a project before I left this week.
So make sure you check that out on the schedule. That is new. We haven't talked about that. Chasing Giants is also sponsoring a trail camera contest that has, I think, 3 or 4 different categories where there's prizes, all kinds of stuff. So we're sponsoring that. Obviously, the baking contest, the art contest. So, yeah, check it out. I'm going to play a real quick commercial teaser reel for Midwest Sportsman's Classic. Hope you watch it, and we'll be right back to talk about South Texas.
Every outdoorsman has a place where the season never ends, where inspiration meets opportunity. Coming this February to the Michiana Event Center in Shipshewana, Indiana, the FAE Midwest Sportsman Classic. Thursday, February 19th through Saturday, February 21st. Come see the whitetail legends. Don't miss the Chasing Giants live podcast with Don Higgins and Terry Peer on Thursday night. Or the Timberworks Lumberjack Show, 3 shows per day on Friday and Saturday. Brent Henderson, the author of Into the Wilds, will be on stage Thursday and Friday night. And don't miss this year's highlight event. Legendary anglers Kevin Van Dam and Mark Zona will be live on stage Friday night inside the Coliseum for Friday Night Bites. They'll show you how legends catch big fish. Also in this year's unmatched speaker lineup, Team Radical on big game hunting and predator calling. Lee Mitchell with public land deer hunting. Gene and Barry Wenzel. Bobby Worthington. Wes Delks. Joe Miles. Jack Houston. Ryan Hirschberger on turkey calling. Andy Andreas on fruit trees for wildlife. Cal Ditmar on trapping. Smokey from Smokey's Deer Lures. And Mike Raber rounding out the fishing lineup. This year's show also features a baking contest and an art show with many categories. Thousands of dollars in attendee giveaways, guns, a double drop hunting blind, a fishing trip, Osseo camo, kayak, and more. With hundreds of booths, the exhibitors include all things outdoors, hunting and fishing, guns and ammo, camping, footwear, and so much more. Find a full show schedule and detailed info at MidwestSportsmanClassic.com. Tickets available at the door. All things outdoors will be at the FAE Midwest Sportsman Classic.
Well, all I have to say, Don, is South Texas is a different animal. I've been in Houston for business, but never left the city. And Austin Razor and I went to South Texas for a very short hunt to inspect and kind of vet out a location that we want to do a fundraiser for Lester's Feet in 2027. We're going to sell tickets this year, but the hunt will be in January 2027. Austin and I got down there a little bit early one morning, and we just drove around the countryside. We wasted about 3 hours just doing country road driving like, we do in August, looking at soybean fields and alfalfa fields. And my goodness, the thing that I came away of South Texas, and people who've been down there and understand it, is it amazes me that whitetail as a whole can adapt and go from a place as dry and hot as South Texas and live in basically brush and cactus where everything there is pointy and pokey, to they can live and thrive in northern Saskatchewan and Alberta and put on these huge bodies to keep them warm to survive these. And all of the subspecies, whitetail are just the most fascinating thing that I ever seen.
Yeah, and I got to thinking about that after you mentioned that. I was on a call this week, and you really aren't even seeing the extreme on the whole, species subspecies chart, because there's the Coues deer in Florida, which are smaller than those South Texas, or the Keys deer in Florida that are smaller than the South Texas deer, and then there's the Coues deer in Arizona, and I think there are probably some in New Mexico and Old Mexico. So, yeah, you're at one end of the spectrum, but you're not all the way to that end of the spectrum. And then if you would lay one of those Coues deer next to one of those giant Canadian deer, and to think that they're all the same species, and I forget how many subspecies of whitetails there are, but you're right, it's one amazing species, and I'm not sure there's another species like that, at least on the wildlife side of things.
Yeah, that was just the most fascinating. I went down there trying to learn as much as I could. We all hunted with guides. We had somebody in the blind with us at all times, and just watching how these deer react. And obviously food and water is the weakest link in that country. So we were all hunting, and they would feed, and obviously water tanks and that type of thing, but I'm going to make a video. We didn't want to make a hunting video, if that makes sense. But we got 3 of the 4 kills that our group got on video. Myself, Austin Razor, Joe Miles, and his son Jack all shot bucks in just a 2.5 day window on this 10,000 acre low fence ranch. And we're gonna make a video more about the experience and the facilities, so that we can kind of let people know what they're going to buy a raffle ticket on here coming up soon. But yeah, it was pretty funny. I ended up shooting 4 pigs, 3 of them with a bow on 2 shots. I had a pass through and shot a second pig in the head. So I got 2 with 1 arrow. And then the buck ended up coming in that they wanted us to. This was a management hunt, so each of us had kind of a target buck that the ranch wanted us to shoot. We all shot that specific buck they wanted. But when my buck came in, he was behind one of the cattle panels where the feeder was, and I did not want to shoot. So I had my Brenton 6mm arc there, and I shot mine at, I think, 23 or 24 yards with a rifle just to get it done. But just fantastic lodging. Make sure you pay attention to Chasing Giants TV YouTube. Within the next week or so, we're going to have this hunt on there. Everybody's going to want to ask when they can purchase raffle tickets. So right now we're waiting for the final approval from the Kentucky State Gaming Commission. The new website is in standby mode. You're going to be able to buy tickets online, and we'll have a long period of time to buy tickets to go on this hunt with Joe Miles, Don Higgins, myself, and a special guest. And all of the terms, details of that will roll out when we release it. But don't fear. If you're coming to Shipshewana this year, we got a special thing that we will do at that show for those people that's running completely separate from everything else. So I'm going to keep that as a surprise till we get to Shipshewana. But I'm totally stoked that we're going to be able to go down there. Austin saw a roadrunner. Actually, he saw a couple of them. Yeah, he said that was pretty cool. Bobcats, coyotes, pigs. Yeah, just an amazing place that's just fascinating to me. The other thing that I thought was interesting, I'm just gonna do a Euro mount on the buck I shot, but Austin's gonna get his mounted. So they caped out the whole deer for him. When they were caping this deer, and remember that these bucks field dress like, I bet mine field dress like 90 pounds. I bet Austin's was maybe 110. I mean, they're small bodies. So when you see 145, with that wide chocolate rack frame on the body the size of my golden doodle, it just looks massive. I mean, I couldn't score these deer on the hoof down there by any means. But when they were caping that deer, they kept getting poked. These deer had so many thorns all through their hide poking them, where they would get stuck, because everything growing down there has a thorn. And they were when they caped it out, they were either had gloves on or they were constantly taking the needles out of their hands as they were going just down the cape, down the neck. And I'm like, holy cow, that's how these deer live, is walking through all this stuff where they get poked by needles all the time. Can you imagine eating that browse down there?
That's crazy. How far from San Antonio were you?
We were way south of San Antonio. We were closer to the Mexico line. So the closest bigger town that people will want to, if they want to look at a map, is we were about 40 minutes outside of Corpus Christi, which if people are offshore fishing in the Gulf, Corpus Christi, I believe, is one of the bigger fishing towns out of the Gulf. So San Antonio would be northwest of where we were at.
Well, when I go next year, if I'm going that far south, I'm stopping at San Antonio at John Hagee's church. And John Hagee is my favorite TV pastor. And I'm telling you what, that guy tells it like it is. I'd love to meet John Hagee, and I may not get to meet him, but I'm going to go to his church and I'm going to listen.
Well, I'm sure we'll see if we can even figure out if we can meet him somehow while we're down there, if we come into that area. But we booked it for next year, but please be patient with us. I have to wait till we have approval from the Kentucky Gaming Commission before I can release all of the details. Just keep listening, stay tuned, and we'll have more. But yeah, for 4 of us to kill the exact buck that the ranch wanted killed for management hunts, yeah, it was a blast. And the food, the lodging, first class by everybody. But there's so many other things that we're going to be able to do as a group while we're down there. They can shoot a skeet, trap. You can go coyote hunting with thermals at night, long range shooting. The guides were so impressed. Nobody down there had ever used a gas powered firearm before. So everybody down there that hunts usually has like a custom built bolt gun or whatever. So they had never seen somebody hunt with an AR style. And of course I had my Brenton 6mm ARC. And so they took it over to their range. They were plunking steel at 600 yards with an out-of-the-box rifle, no custom work. So they were absolutely stoked about how accurate that Brenton was right out of the box. So they had a blast with it. The guides were having a lot of fun shooting it, and just super great time. We got a bunch of video footage, not just of our bucks that we harvested, but just different hogs, deer, all kinds of stuff. So you'll be able to get a feel for that and the accommodations here on Chasing Giants TV really, really soon. So Don, let's go to the Higgins hot seat question. This segment's brought to us by Blinds. It's a question that Don doesn't know that it's coming every week, but I'm going to go non-hunting this time, and we're going to see if we can get you on a little political rant, because everybody seems to like those a little bit. Now that the news is not covering anything from Venezuela and threats are going out to other countries, what is your take on Trump just saying, this is the way we're going to go, get on board, or I'm doing it my way?
Well, does he really have a choice? Because the Democrats they obstruct everything that he tries to do. Everything. He's pretty much just got to do what he's got to do. I mean, he's got 3 more years in office. He's got an agenda that he wants to accomplish. And I don't agree with him on everything. I'm not one of these blind followers that thinks that he can do no wrong. But I think that he's the best president of our lifetime. If you look at what he's gone up against, I think if you really could dig into the other presidents in our lifetime, John Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, which was the year that I was born. So basically, I'm looking back in my lifetime from Johnson to Trump, and I would be willing to bet that every one of the presidents before Trump was compromised somehow. Their integrity was compromised. They were corrupt, or there was some fraud, insider trading, whatever going on with all of them before Trump. I just don't think Trump is that kind of guy, because I think he's had enough money in his entire life that I don't think money controls him like it does a lot of people. And I think that he's looking to save the country that allowed him to chase the American dream and succeed like he has. I think he's trying to salvage it for his kids and grandkids and future generations. And if he can't get anybody else on board, or the majority on board, I think he's right to just go ahead and do what needs to be done. I think sometimes he's too slow to react. I think a good example is Minnesota and these stinking riots and these people that are trying to protect criminals, because these people aren't deporting, innocent people. Everyone that's here is here illegally that's being deported. I think Trump should have already brought in the military. He should have just cleaned up the mess and done it in about 3 weeks instead of dragging this on as long as it has. And then when he's done, I think he needs to go to Chicago. I think he needs to go to New York City. And I don't think that he should let corrupt judges, corrupt mayors, or governors like we have here in Illinois. I don't think he should let any of those people stand in his way. He was voted in 3 times. Yes, he won 3 elections, whether people want to admit it or not. And the majority of the people are behind him. He needs to clean up the mess. And the other thing, here's the thing I don't like about Trump. He's been in office a year now, and he's exposed all this fraud. Elon had the Doge campaign or committee or whatever it was. They exposed all this fraud. This Somali fraud in Minnesota has been exposed. Not a single person has went to jail yet. I mean, there should be a list of people that have been arrested as long as your arm, and somebody should be going to jail. And if Trump doesn't lock up a large number of corrupt, big-name people, look what the Clintons just did. The Clintons just ignored a subpoena. If you and I would have ignored that subpoena, we'd be sitting behind bars right now, as well as every listener here. There needs to be a long list of big-name people that are in jail when Trump leaves. Now, the bad thing is if the next president elected is a Democrat, he's going to pardon those people on day one and release them all. But if we're going to drain the swamp, there's got to be consequences for these past actions, or it's just going to happen again. It needs to be severe. I'm for taking all these people that are guilty to Guantanamo Bay and letting them live out their life right there, and just you're never going to see freedom again. But I know the people that came here to listen to a deer hunting podcast are probably shaking their head or turning it off by now. But folks, there's some things that are more important than deer hunting, and the future of this country is one of them. And right now, I don't know if you've seen the post I made earlier this week. Maybe it was about a week ago. I've come to the point where I realize that we're never going to turn this country around. And I know I just switched gears 180 right here on us. But we're seeing a battle of good and evil right now. It's going on, and there's no denying it. The Bible's playing out right in front of our face. And I think people like me, and I'm slowly coming to this realization, God is in control. He's written the script. We know how the book ends. This earth is not going to get any better than what it is today. We're headed down the toilet. There's no reversing it. The devil has his day. And the devil's day is right now. He's running wild on earth. But we got to remember that God has his day too. And God gets the final word. And it's very easy for us to get frustrated, especially you get on social media or whatever, and it's just one thing after another from these crazy liberals. But we got to remember who's in charge. And my post I made earlier this week was saying that these liberals are so blinded that they can't even see the truth. And they are as committed to their side of the argument as we are to ours. What they don't understand is that the devil has them people, and he has blinded them. I think the Bible says something about, giving one over to a depraved mind. At some point, God will reveal himself, and then the Holy Spirit will tug on your heart for a while. But after a while, when you turn your back long enough, he's just going to give you over to the devil. And a lot of these people have been turned over to the devil. So I hope all of our listeners, especially our younger guys and gals, will remember that, yeah, the world is falling apart right in front of our eyes right now, but God's already won this battle. You just need to, remember that. Don't get pulled into the ruckus of, these leftist, lunatic, radical, that their agenda, their riots and their protests and all that, because those people are so lost they can't even see it.
Well, there's half of our audience that loves to hear you rant about that, and then a percentage of ours that's like, talk about deer hunting, I don't care to listen to that. Well, we don't do this very often, but we try to throw out a nugget to get Don on a rant or platform like that every once in a while. So either way, if you like it or dislike it, the comment section is right below. It's our suggestion box. And like Don always says, we'll refund your money. But now let's get back on track. Midwest Land Group's listener submitted questions coming up right now.
Ever had a terrible real estate experience? Average realtors usually spend more time selling themselves than on selling your land. They'll tell you anything to get the listing. They know that if they get the listing, you're stuck with them. Not here. Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That means if we don't meet your expectations, you can fire us. That puts all the pressure on us to perform. We don't just list land, we sell it. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us. Visit us at MidwestLandGroup.com.
Okay, the first one comes from Ben Byler from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. It says, Dear Don and Terry, I love your podcast and most of the rants. Well, I hope you love that one we just had there, Ben. My question is, do you really think that people who hunt with a crossbow have more advantages than the people with cameras and cell cameras where they can watch all the deer movement? If we disagree on that issue, we have the full right to, because we live in America. Keep up the good work. Well, Ben, yes, I do think the crossbow has a bigger advantage than a camera. And boy, which direction do I want to take this? So first of all, look at take a state like Illinois, who has just legalized crossbows in recent years, and look at what the archery harvest has done just in those years. Today, the archery harvest in Illinois is bigger than the gun harvest. That was not the case before crossbows. The crossbows have made a bow hunter way, way, way more proficient. The trail camera has been around in Illinois way longer than that. They've been around, let's say, 20 years versus 5 years for the crossbow. The trail camera did not instantly increase the harvest. The crossbow has. I think a trail camera saves as many bucks as it kills. And I say that because of the people using it, not the camera itself, but most people cannot leave that camera out there for more than a week or two, and they got to go check it. And it's constantly, all season long, they're running in wherever this camera's at, and it's human intrusion. We talk about human intrusion on here all the time. That human intrusion that camera creates is a bigger negative than the positive of the pictures it sends back to the user. So I think that the trail camera is pretty much a wash. Yeah, it's helped kill some big bucks, but it's also saved some big bucks. Now with the cell camera, I do think that it is a little more of a positive in terms of getting some bucks killed, because a cell camera can typically be set up, one time, and you don't have to run back in and check it. That human intrusion factor is not near as big as it is on a non-cell camera. So I think you have a little bit of a point there, but even at that, cell cameras have been legal in Illinois, and there's other states. I'm just using Illinois because I'm most familiar with it. Cell cameras have been in use longer than crossbows, but when the crossbows became legal, that's when the harvest just went through the roof. So there's no real argument in my mind if you want to look at the data and facts. And I think, a lot of people, they want to support, what they've been taught. So if they've been taught that cameras are bad, can't use cameras, well, then they're going to look for arguments to support that position. But I think if you look at it objectively, the crossbow has had a way bigger impact on deer harvest than trail cameras, cell cameras, whatever, ever have and ever will. Now, when you start throwing in things like the drone, the thermal drones, now you're talking about something that can have a humongous impact. That's why I'm an advocate on outlawing them, at least during season.
I'm going to answer the question from the point of view who's somebody who's used both and not hide behind any. I'm going to lay it out there. When I used a crossbow after I got hurt, so after 3 shoulder surgeries, just wasn't feeling it. But if I really am honest with everybody, it was because I probably wanted to take the easy way out when I was hurt. If I wanted to try hard enough, looking back on it, I could have done it. And I probably held on to the crossbow 2 seasons longer than I really needed to for one simple reason. It was easier. You can hunt from the ground and make it a whole lot easier from the ground. Your range goes out so much further. Your accuracy goes up so much better. And you don't have to draw it. So your movement in the tree stand getting busted. How many people, if they want to be honest, hunting with a compound, have ever been busted pulling back a bow or moving around in a tree stand when a buck's in shooting range? Most of us, if we want to be honest with us when we first started, right? So I'll be the one to go out there and say that there was a point in my life where I probably used the excuse of those surgeries, held on to it a little bit longer for one reason. And believe me or not believe me, because it was easier. If I would have used a crossbow my entire hunting career, my trophy room would look a whole lot bigger, and that's because it's easier. So you can disagree, but I'm speaking from my personal view and why I used it, and probably why I held on to it longer than I needed to. It wasn't till the back surgery when I really buckled down in therapy that I felt comfortable, really being able to shoot enough that I could be confident in my shot. So it's just my opinion from a probably over-honest person to all of our listeners.
Well, before we move on to the next question, I do want to thank Ben for the way he posed his question. His last line,
Sure.
we can disagree, and that's fine. And Ben, I hope if you're at the Ships You Want to show, you come up and introduce yourself, because disagreeing is fine. It's how you go about it, and if you do it in a respectful manner, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And I think that's what gets lost on social media a lot of times, is the disagreements are not done respectfully. But Ben, really appreciate how you posed that question, and I take no offense whatsoever, and hope to shake your hand one day.
Yeah, and for example, I hunted on your farm with a crossbow, I think 3 or 4 times. You never said one word to me about that. So for those crossbow hunters that think we hate you and all that, that's definitely not the case. So we've beat that drum too many times. People can take it how they want, but yeah, we don't dislike people who hunt out of a love swing, use a crossbow, wear sleeveless shirts. I don't care.
Expandable product.
Yeah, there you go. But again, it's okay to have a different opinion. All right, next question.
This one comes from Mike Kelly from Moni, Illinois. It says, Dear Don and Terry, great podcast. Have not missed an episode yet. So during October and November, it's known that bucks fight each other. I've been able to witness several fights and also get them on my trail cameras, but this last week was a first. I have bucks fighting on my camera in mid-January. Is this typical behavior for January, and I've just not noticed it? Just curious if this is something you have observed, if I've not heard you talk about. Well, Mike, as long as bucks have antlers on their heads, they're going to spar to some degree. But in January, a real honest-to-goodness fight is probably only going to happen when there's a doe in heat. And I made a post this week about January being the month when I think most doe fawns get bred, or more get bred during January than any other month. And when you get a doe fawn that comes into heat in January, it's not like the rut where there's hot does everywhere. You got one hot doe in the whole neighborhood, and every buck in the area probably knows about it because they can smell them from a mile away. So she attracts the attention of a lot of bucks that are on her tail. And if you see a hot doe in January, she's almost always going to have multiple bucks trailing her. It's not going to be like she's with one buck. She's going to have a bunch of them. And that is a ripe situation for an all-out fight to happen. So I'm not surprised that you've seen it in January. It happens probably more than we realize. Not as much as it would happen in November, even probably December. But as long as those bucks still have antlers on their head, yep, they're going to get those antlers together and they're going to shove each other around.
I saw somebody ask you a comment on social media the other day. If a buck already sheds, will he still breed?
Absolutely. Yeah, those antlers are not connected to his other end, so he'll still get her done.
I would venture to guess when I had my vasectomy, I would have thought that those things were connected to stuff up here when all of that stuff was being done. But yeah, I don't think that the horns have anything to do with it.
Nope.
Too much information for those listeners that are out there.
Yeah, like one guy commented, he said, he called the guy out and he says, when you clip your toenails, does that mean you stop having sex with your wife? All right, we better move on to the next question. This one comes from from Vermilion, South Dakota. It's thanks Don and Terry for doing the podcast. I know it's a significant time commitment on your part, but it is something I look forward to every week and get so much information from it. My question is, when is the best time to overseed my clover plot? We have recently had some temps in the 50s, but now this weekend it's back down near zero. I have some plots that need some attention, and I just want to know when I should do it and under what weather conditions. For example, snow on the ground or not, etc. Thank you. Well, Farron, you're in South Dakota. It's way too early for you to think about frost seeding. You're going to want to wait till March. So what you want to do is wait until early spring. The temperatures are rising, but you're still getting some nighttime freezing temperatures. It doesn't need to sit there and freeze and thaw for the next 2 months. Like what you're going to have. You want only a few of those freeze and thaws on that clover seed. Now, frost seeding switchgrass is a different story. Frost seeding switchgrass, you should do it earlier in the winter and get as many of those freeze thaw cycles on it as possible. But with clover, you want to wait. And where I'm at in central Illinois, mid-March is about ideal because we're still typically going to get a few nights below freezing. But I want to back up to switchgrass because I mentioned it. I no longer advise frost seeding switchgrass. You can get a good stand that way, but it is far from the ideal way to do it. If you can possibly drill that switchgrass, drill it instead of frost seeding. But if you do frost seed, make sure you do it early.
Can I make a quick point here in between questions? Because we're going to try to get one more. At ATA this year, our buddy Paul and our partner Wildlife Farming had a booth, and they introduced the new pH drill M7 drill. And I'm telling you, when I saw this thing, I'm like, that is exactly what this industry needs, because the G series drill, like what you have on your, is overkill for most food plotters. And the price point, it's like, how do I justify that? And the weight of it is so heavy to get a 7-footer that covers the rear tractor tires on like a 50 to 75 horse. It's really, really heavy for it. Dangerous to load it on a trailer. And Don, wait till you see this new M7. I'm going to get one here in just a couple months, right before spring planting season. They debuted this. If, guys, you're looking for a drill, this is going to fill the gap of most everything that food plotters want to do. You can choke the seed gates down to do clover and switchgrass, all the way up to plug it and run food plot corn in it. But at a price point that makes sense for the average food plotter that's only using it a couple times. I'm telling you, you look at the gap in the market, and Paul absolutely nailed this. Our partners at Wildlife Farming are going to be getting it out to dealers and available for sale. But when you talk about for food plotters, this thing's the real deal. I don't know that you've seen it yet.
I have not seen it yet, but one of the discounts that we offer our consulting clients is a discount. If the drill is purchased through me, we can't make every dealer give you a discount. Being a dealer myself, if you're interested in one of these new drills, I don't have pricing yet, so don't ask me that yet, but I can get you that drill, and that discount that our consulting clients get will apply to this new drill.
Yeah. Sometimes it actually covers the cost of what Wes or I or the other guys are even charging with how much you save on products that we give a discount for. So let's try to get maybe one, maybe two. We might run a little bit long, but let's try to get at least one more done on this episode.
This one comes from Russell Morris from Lawrenceville, Illinois. He says, Don and Terry, I really enjoy watching your show. My question today is about tree stand placement. Don, your strategy is to place your tree stands close to the property edge to slip in and slip out undetected. About how far would you say your average stand is placed from the edge of cover, and what would be about the maximum distance that you would place a stand before you would rule out that location? Well, Russell, on my farm, the average distance from the edge of cover for my stands is about 10 feet. I'm right on the edge. I'm trying to think of which of my stands is in the furthest. I've got a couple that are probably in where you shot King David buck, Terry, was probably the one. There's that one, and then there's another one.
10 yards?
Yeah. It ain't very far. Maybe 20 yards on the other one.
Yeah.
20 yards max is in. How far would I consider? Well, it depends on the access and the layout and everything. If you can access a stand in the cover, like down a ravine or something like that, that's a totally different situation. I don't think there's a maximum distance that I could say. In farm country, I don't go very far, but in some of, like I was just in southern Missouri this week, also did a couple properties there as well. And in that terrain, I would go in definitely a little farther. And you got to play your hand that you're dealt. And whatever that property gives you. I mean, I explained to my clients this week that there's 2 steps to this process. First, we got to grow the biggest bucks we possibly can on your property. And then we got to get those bucks killed. And it does no good to grow giants if they live in your sanctuary and you never get a chance to kill them. So we got to do what we can to get those bucks killed as well. Ironically, I met with a client last weekend who had a property that of mine that I'd consulted on years ago that he sold, and the new owners took the plan and they went right into the sanctuary and they killed 3 or 4 bucks in the sanctuary. And they were just, they thought the old owners, my understanding anyway, is they thought the old owners were crazy for not going in that sanctuary and hunting, because they marched right in there and they killed 3 or 4 bucks. Well, my reply was, let's see how many they kill next year and the year after and the year after. The sellers actually handed the new owners a gift, and that gift was a buck herd on their farm that was bedding and living on that farm. And it sounds to me like the new owners are going to ruin that right out of the gate. So it's more important to have that buck bedded on your property day after day after day than it is to run into the middle of your property and hunt a great stand location, because if you don't get him killed pretty quick, you're going to run him off, and he's no longer going to be betting on you. And when he's no longer betting on you, your odds of killing him are about 10% what they are if he's betting on you. So the real key in all this land management stuff is to get the bucks that you want to kill betting on your property and not somewhere else.
All right, well, let's try to squeeze one more in, because this one deals with soil health, and I know a lot of us are trying to make decisions and budgets for the upcoming planting season. So I want to try to get this one in, and then we'll wrap up the show real quick.
This one comes from Brock Van Asdalen from Minooka, Illinois. It says, my question is regarding soil health. After listening to your podcast, I've realized the importance of soil health to create the most nutrient-dense plants possible for the deer. We're in the process of clearing 3 acres of timber to create a larger plot. Going to plant Gen 2 soybeans in the plot with real-world clover and chicory around the perimeter. I plan on getting a soil test and applying fertilizer accordingly, but also really want to try pH balancer, humic acid, or biochar. I'm sure applying all 3 would be best, but I just can't afford to do that with all the other expenses. Which one of these 3 products would you recommend using given the situation? Also, do Gen 2 soybeans need inoculant, or is that the red coating on the seed? Thank you so much for sharing your faith of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Really appreciate this podcast, as I have learned a ton. I look forward to every Sunday. Church and a new Chasing Giants episode. Best day of the week. Well, Brock, let's address the coating on the soybeans first. That coating is a fungicide, and that'll just help that soybean battle different fungal issues. What happens with soybeans if they're not treated with a fungicide is they can rot in the ground. Instead of germinating, that bean will just rot, especially in lower temperature conditions. So with that fungicide coating, you can plant those Gen 2 soybeans a lot earlier in the year when cooler still every soybean should sprout and grow. So that's a fungicide. It's not an inoculant. On a brand new plot like what you've described, you should use an inoculant. If it's an established plot, or if it's an established ag field where plots have been grown or crops have been grown, then an inoculant is not necessary at all. But on a brand new plot like you've described, an inoculant will really help your germination rate and success of that plot.
Old pasture ground or ground coming out of CRP, it'll really help you.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's not been a cultivated plot, inoculate those soybeans. So you asked which of those three products, the pH balancer, the biochar, or the humic, that you should concentrate on as money is an issue. And folks, this just goes back to our brutal honesty. We want you to be successful. And to be honest, I would not worry about any of those three products. I would first be doing a soil test to get your pH right. And your pH, all you need for that is cheap ag lime. Ag lime is just a few dollars a ton, and you may need up to 3 tons an acre. But it's way more important that you get that soil pH right before you worry about anything else. Because if the pH is off, you could, like, let's just say nitrogen or NPK, any of those macronutrients that are needed to grow a crop. You could have the right levels, and you can even have abundance of all three of those. And if the pH is off, the plant cannot utilize them. So the pH is the most important thing that you can do to your soil, because without the proper pH, the plants can't utilize the nutrients that are there. And to get the pH right, it just takes lime. There's no sense spending money on expensive products until you get the pH right. So if I was you, the first year, I would just focus on as much lime as you needed, because it's going to probably take tons per acre. But again, it's really, really cheap, a few dollars per ton. And get that right. And in the future, so biochar is a product that you apply one time. And so in the future, at some point when you can afford it, it's in your budget, then apply the biochar. And don't skimp when you do. I mean, if you go to our website, we're going to recommend 1,000 to 1,500 pounds per acre. Well, I put 2,000 pounds on mine, and we're just trying to make it affordable. So you cannot put too much. You can put 10 tons per acre, and it's not going to hurt you whatsoever. But I wouldn't do that until you get the pH right and everything else right. The biochar is a one-time thing. Humic acid, it does very similar things that the biochar does, but it breaks down, and you'll need to reapply that about every 2 to 3 years. So, but you use a whole lot less of it. So, maybe as the first application is humic, and that'll buy you 3 years, say, and then you work in the biochar. The pH balancer is it's like a boost. It gives that new crop a boost. So I apply pH balancer to my clover only every spring. And I'm telling you, if we get a rain right after that is applied, that clover just absolutely explodes, and it's a green, lush carpet. It just gives that clover a shot of nitrogen and kind of, I forget what all's in it. There's actually some humic in it. There's some lime, pelletized lime, gypsum, and some other things that'll just boost that crop. And it's not something that's going to last long term. When you apply that lime, you're only going to have to do that about once every 5 years or so. Go in and do a soil test and check that pH and maybe add more lime. Lime's not something that you need to add every year once you get the pH right, but you will need to check that periodically. But why I like this question is it gives me an opportunity to demonstrate that Terry and I are not here just blindly pushing products. I'm telling you not to buy pH balancer, not to buy humic, and not to buy biochar until you first get your pH right. And we're not selling ag lime, but ag lime is what you need, and it's cheap, and that's your first step.
We could go down a rabbit hole with that real quick, but we're running over this week. Appreciate everybody's understanding in the late upload today. But yeah, we got Tate Hale doing the Sunday night prayer time right after the closing thoughts from Don. And also check out Dad's podcast, Chasing Assurance. He is diving into each of the disciples between now and Easter, basically learning lessons from the historical facts of the disciples, where they came from, who they were, and maybe some things that you didn't know about each of them. And I think it's a really good series for Dad's putting together. So check that out. Yeah, everybody stay warm. go shovel some snow, right?
Yeah. You know what I appreciate about the Chasing Assurance podcast is your dad has a gift with words. Him and I could say the same thing, and I could offend 100 people, and he could attract and gain the attention of every one of them. He's just got a good way of wording the point that he's trying to make. So I encourage everybody to go listen to that podcast, and great messages as well. But anyway, guys, be sure and check out that list of events where Terry and I are going to be this winter, and hope to see you at some of those events. And hope you have a great week. Stay warm. God bless everyone.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Hey guys, what's up? Tate Hale here, back for another week of the prayer time. And for me this week, I just wanted to share something that I kind of learned a lesson around a while back ago that for me this week is, I guess, kind of hits home. As this weekend I fly out for Texas for the Disabled Outdoorsman USA Gala. It's a great event. It's something I'm honored to be an ambassador for. But to tell you the truth, guys, I'm a homebody and I don't enjoy travel so much. So it is kind of creates some anxiety and even fear for me. And like I said, it's a great event. This year, they'll present me with that pure white non-albino buck that I harvested down in South Texas in November. We're going to try to raise close to $1 million this year. We believe we can hit $1 million this night. And so it's good, and we honor God in everything we do. And it's, it just relates to this lesson I want to share. And it revolves around when we're called to get out of the boat. As when Jesus called Peter, when he's walking on the water and calls Peter to walk on water with him. That's kind of what this lesson centers around. So I hope it helps you and serves you as it did me. So I will start just with the scripture in Matthew chapter 14, verse 23. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up to the mountains to pray by himself. And now when the evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "Is it a ghost?" And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why do you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So some points from that passage. That first thing I want to say, if I'm in that boat, and I don't know how many disciples were in the boat, but if I'm one of them and I see my boy get out and he's walking on water, I want to do that. So I always wondered, why didn't more of the disciples do this, man? They see the Son of God calling Peter to do this, walking on water, and Peter was the only one that got to experience that. But the first thing, the point for me is, faith to get out of the boat. And that's kind of what this lesson is about, guys. Getting out of the boat when we feel called by God to do something. Faith to do just that. There's safety in the quote-unquote boat. When the storms around us are always swirling, which it always is in life, it feels more comfortable and safe to stay in the boat. And it's scary when those seas are raging, which in life often does. But Jesus calls us many times to get out of the boat, whether that be through ministry, business ventures, changing who we are as fathers, sons, husbands, whatever. We need to listen to that call and show faith, be willing to get out of the boat. And the one thing that I really took from this verse is, as long as our eyes stay fixed on Jesus, no matter what we're going through, no matter how much the seas are raging around us, we will stay afloat. It was only when Peter took his eyes, when he was fixed on Jesus, he took his eyes off of Jesus, that he began to sink. And I can tell you, in my personal life with some of my past, whenever I took my eyes off of Jesus, that's when I was easily more susceptible to slip back into some of my old thought patterns. And so always, if we keep our eyes on Christ, then we do not sink, no matter what the world or the storms around us are doing. One cool thing that I really like about this, and I believe more believers need to remember this, is that the Bible says all fall short of the glory of God. Not some, not a few, but all. That means all of us. We are going to fall short of the glory of God. But when we do, Jesus is always going to be there, and he's going to reach down his hand to pull us right back up to him. All we have to do is just repent for that and keep our eyes fixed on him so we don't sink. But when we do, because all will, we got to believe and know that Jesus loves us so much that no matter what we're going through, when we do fail, when we do fall short of his glory and we start to sink, we just ask for him to come back and be the Lord and Savior of our lives, and he will more than willingly reach down his hand and pull you right back up. A great example of that specific point that I seen just a couple weeks ago on our own podcast, we had a gentleman, very successful entrepreneur, worth a lot of money in our local area, devout man of God, but he kept a few years ago falling back and really living a sinful life. And he was a man of faith. He had been baptized into Christ and just couldn't seem to stay on that path. And now he is, thankfully. But one thing we talked about, brother, when you took your eyes off of Christ, you started to sink. But every time you reached your hand back out for him, he was there to pull you right back up. And that's the same with all of us. Another thing is it strengthens our faith. It strengthens our walk when we are dependent on God and listening to his calling. It's not always comfortable, guys. And I would say most of you agree that a lot of the callings on our lives, the things we feel God has called us to do, it has been very uncomfortable for us. But it strengthens your faith and reliance on him, that when you follow your calling, no matter what the storms of life produce, you are literally walking on water, keeping your eyes centered on Jesus. And the last thing I want to say, that for me, it's kind of like the old saying that life happens on the field, not in the stands. And that's the same thing with our walk with Jesus and in life. I look back over my football career, and I'm sure most of you know I have a birth defect in my feet. And for me, when I was young, to be an athlete shaved years off of the degeneration process of my feet and how much pain it would cause down the line. But I knew the game was played on the field. So all the injuries, all the damage I knew I was doing to my feet, which would speed up the possible amputation that came later in life, all those old injuries, I wouldn't trade them for nothing, because the game happens on the field. And unfortunately, so many people set up in the stands and watch the game of life go by. And the same thing with unfortunately, some in the Christian community. They set up in the stands and they play it safe, not getting out of the boat when they are called, because it is scary. Those storms are always raging. But the main lesson that I want to get through to you guys tonight is, if we just keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we can walk on the waters that he calls us to walk on. And when the storms rage and we take our eyes off of him, which is bound to happen, we just reach up our hand and ask for him. and he will gladly come right back into your life, reach down his hand, and pull you up out of the raging sea. So guys, I hope in some way that served you. It is an honor to be with you guys this week, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have an awesome rest of your week. Stay blessed. Appreciate you.